Hello. Globalism is one of the important and most critical issues of our time. I'm going to provide for you a short synopsis of what globalism is all about. Globalism could be in different fields, whether it's political science or religion or philosophy or economics or management or accounting or finance and many other fields. There is a global aspect to all of these different fields. I looked at dictionary and noticed that globalism is defined by Webster's as a policy outlook that is global in its orientation. And then Wikipedia dictionary says that placing interests of the whole above nations can be considered the global aspect of it. In other words, integrated global economy, opposite of self, and considering the global aspects in politics, in culture, in environment, in world affairs, is the global aspect of it. So what are the major global issues of our time? First and foremost is the question of population. Do you know that basically less than 200 years ago, 1810 or 1815, the world population was 1 billion. By the time of World War II, 1940, it was a little over 2 billion. 1950, the world population was 2.5 billion. And now, in a span of 60 years, now the population is 7 billion. So in my lifetime, the world population has more than tripled. And so that has put a lot of stress on the world situation from different aspects. Basically from this population, 4 billion of it, or almost 60%, live in Asia, and the rest in all other continents. The population in the West, in Western democracies, which means primarily Europe and North America and Australia and New Zealand, and in all these industrial countries and democracies, the world population has stabilized. It does not increase exponentially like many other countries. In other countries, there's population explosion. Then, particularly in case of Asia, China in particular, and then India, and then the entire Middle East and Near East, that's North Africa. One other danger point is that, based on many studies, there are considerably more men than women. At this time, it is estimated there are some 100 million more men than women, which is not significant considering the population of 4 billion or so. But this difference is increasing, and it is estimated that in the next 10-15 years we may have considerably more men than women in these countries. The reason is because of medical advances. You know, there's a lot more abortion, unfortunately, when they discover that the newly born would be a girl. A lot of families decide to abort them, and so as a result, it is estimated that there's a possibility that there will be 20 or 25% more men than women in the years to come. And that poses another significant danger, because the studies show that where there are significantly more men, particularly younger men, between the age of 15 to 40, then there's no more turmoil, there's more disturbances, and there's more civil war, and there's more war in these kind of environments. Particularly if that's the situation, they don't have a job, or different opportunities as well. So this is a critical issue, and something needs to be done. The United Nations is doing a lot of work. There are other organizations that are doing a lot of work, mainly education and family planning. Many studies show that if families would have an average of 2, or said 2.1 replacement, then the world population would stabilize. Otherwise, it's going to put a lot of stress on environment, on food, on energy, on pollution, on water resources, and you just name it. So this is number one most critical issues from a global perspective that need to be addressed for the good of humanity at large, for the good of all of us. Some studies suggest that there's approximately 1 million conception per day in the world. 1/3 of it do not materialize, and so the 2/3, which is 600,000 to 700,000, consider about half of it to be people die and people are born. So the other half, 300,000 to 350,000 more births than death. That amounts, if you multiply by 365 days, to 100 to 140 million more people a year. 140 million more people a year. Just imagine that what it does to the world condition in the years to come. The other critical issue, of course, connection to this is the question of resources. That is the question of food, water, and energy in particular. Some studies show that there are at least 1 billion people at risk of not having enough water, particularly for drinking purposes. The stress on food and famine is also another critical question that many organizations are addressing, and we need to be aware of it. Particularly because of the environmental problems that we are facing. There are more droughts, and there are more areas where the earth is not adequately proper for cultivation and agriculture. So that causes another problem. And then as people become better off, then the other problem is meat consumption. That there's some 7 to 10 times more usage of vegetables to feed the chicken and the cow and the sheep than if we were vegetarians. So that's another question, another critical aspect for our survival in the future. And then, of course, the question of energy. Gas and oil and other means of providing energy, and as to how many more years of fossil energy do we have left, and what it does to our environment. So then there comes the question of environment and the problems that we see in terms of increasing amount of gas, particularly in industrialized nations and in places where there are a lot of factories. That has put a lot of stress on the environment, and we see the amazing the change in weather conditions as a result of this instability that the CO2 in the environment has caused. And of course the question of fertilizer and the kind of fertilizer we use, and the amount of waste which is generated. And then what do we do with this waste? That has to go to some dump of some kind, someplace in the world, which is causing additional problems. Then, of course, we have the question of migration. As some regions of the world become wealthier and there are more opportunities, and there are people who are starving to death basically, or there are under conditions which is totally unstable to raise a family. So people either in desperation or in desire to better themselves and better their own conditions, they want to move to other better areas of the world. So this becomes the question of refugees and how to deal with it, and how countries can balance out the need of humanity and their own needs for stabilization. And of course, if the world is unstable, no matter how well we are off, our condition would be unstable as well. So that becomes another problem, a huge problem that is being addressed and needs to be addressed more closely. Then of course we have the question of flow of information. What is happening in the Middle East is partly due to free flow of information. With the advent of the YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and email and all the rest of it, the world is connected. So people hear and see how other places live and work and opportunities, and they don't want to be isolated. So we're coming up from a positive point of view to a global culture and a global way of life. And then all of these rough edges, we go through this period of turmoil, but eventually would be, a lot of wounds would be healed in effect for a better world, for a unified world, and that is coming in the future. This information age has given us, starting with radio and television and internet and all the other possibilities, and of course fax machine and telephone and all the other amenities that we receive, and communication and travel. It's all in the past century where we have motorcycle and cars and then airplanes and supersonics and all the rest of it, which allows us to communicate. So in the short run, there are lots of dangers, lots of problems, but in the longer term, and we don't know how long that would be, 50 years or 100 years from now, we may be looking at a unified, harmonized world, the same way that we live in a city or a neighborhood, where we understand each other, we allow each other our space, and at the same time we enjoy one another's company and association with one another. Then of course, with all of that, there's a question of global security. Democracy, freedom, but at the same time we have to have a police force to monitor the excesses of man, the excesses of certain individuals who cannot be left totally to their own designs, otherwise they would destroy them, not only themselves but the society at large. Then of course we need to look at the question of trade, global trade, free trade, and protectionism. Countries in the interim period need to protect their industries, the people, the jobs, but then for how long can they do it? When another country in desperation, or because they don't have that standard of living, they're willing to produce the goods and services for 1/5 or 1/10 of the price of what it cost us in our country to produce a certain good and service. So that also in the long run is going to be better for everyone, so that goods and services will be produced at the lowest possible cost for any part of the globe that wants to produce it. And that would eventually bring about a level of equity to the globe. What I'd like to share with you more with regard to these issues is then the question of investment. A lot of global trade brings with it also investment. Where is more suitable for investment? Where should we invest in the world? And from what countries come to us, to our country, to invest? If the conditions are suitable and proper and advantageous, and very suitable for our companies to invest. So this flow again causes imbalances in the short run, but in the long run it brings stability to the world, where the whole world is connected, interconnected, through trade and through investment and through finance. We have IMF, International Monetary Fund, and then World Bank and the organizations that are dealing with these issues. There are lots of criticism as to improper balance or improper rules of the wealthy countries and unwealthy countries. But in the long run, these are all the tools to bring about more harmony to our world. Then, of course, the question of culture. We have our cultural uniqueness for language, for food, for our habits, and then up to the point of religion, ethnicity, and so on. So, when we travel, we enjoy a lot of those differences. In the word of Baha'u'llah, we are all the fruits and the branches of one tree. This span of the earth is one country and mankind is citizen. But at the same time, we can celebrate our differences, but those differences are constructive. And we always want to try another kind of food, or another kind of architecture, and another kind of celebration of life in any way that they have. But then the rough edges, in terms of religions and other stuff, needs to give way. If there's one God, there has to be one God who gives to humanity certain individuals who can be considered prophets or manifestations or seers who guide us. So in the essence of it, which is harmony and unity and oneness and compassion and justice, there's no difference. It is our interpretation which creates the rough edges, as Samuel Huntington calls clash of civilizations. But it doesn't have to be clash. We can learn from each other and choose the very best from among all those differences, and maintain what is good for us, but at the same time celebrate our differences as well. Celebrate differences which are constructive. Then of course there's the question of education and world education, and how global universities across the globe can bring about the best of the best from all these different communities to educate the humankind for the betterment of mankind on earth across the globe. I also like to mention the question of health, which is a critical issue. If there's many diseases that are contagious, if it is spread in one country and it's spread in another part of the globe, so particularly the question of tuberculosis and AIDS and many other diseases. So there are many organizations working for World Health Organization, and we have to be aware of it and give a helping hand, whether you're a doctor or nurse, when we can and where we can, and give some of our time to these kind of services. One of the most critical issues of our time is the question of human rights. Fortunately, in 1948, after formation of the United Nations, we had Declaration of Human Rights that many countries agreed to it and signed that Charter of Human Rights. But unfortunately, in application, many countries violated those basic rules of conduct in terms of human rights. There are freedom of worship and freedom of ideas, and so many people across the globe are being tortured and executed because of having ideas contrary to what the ruling class is forcing on them. And this is unfortunate at this stage of development of the humankind, and needs to be addressed. There have been cultures and communities which have been basically obliterated. Genocide all across the globe, not only in prior centuries, in this century and in this age, and it is still continuing. And this is the most horrible thing. There are many good people who are giving a helping hand to the United Nations to educate mankind with regard to our common humanity, and to see how we can stop this nonsense. But still a lot of it is going on everywhere. With all the advances, we think we are a lot closer to peace, but look at what happened after World War II. You know, from Korea and Vietnam and Afghanistan and Russia and then Afghanistan and other countries after the 2001 September 11 incident, and the conflicts in Iraq with Iran, Iraq with Kuwait, and then Iraq with the US and others, coalition force, and then Iraq again. And its present situation and the turmoil in the Middle East, and wars in different parts of Africa in particular, and then some in South America. What we notice is that democracies, when countries become democratic, basically they don't fight one another. After World War II, when democracies further flourished, we have not seen any kind of war between the Western European nations, or Australia and New Zealand, and then Canada and US. So these countries sort of understand each other, and know that for the development there is no reason to create war, but rather if there are differences, they can sort it out and talk to one another to resolve conflicts. Now, among the recent developments is the International Tribunal, which was created in the 1990s to deal with the catastrophe of Yugoslavia and putting on trial many of these Serb leaders who were considered criminals, and then it led in 2002 to creation of the Court of the Criminal Justice Court, International Criminal Justice Court, and that is another advance toward world harmony and world unity. And currently, those who have created the genocide in Sudan and in Rwanda and other places, particularly in Africa, are being tried and will be tried in that international court, which is placed in the Netherlands, in Holland, in Hague. Now we have then the question, the issue of multinational corporations. A lot of good they have done, but there are lots of problems where they take advantage of. They want the best for themselves in terms of profitability, in terms of moving capital and labor from one area to another, but then that also causes havoc and devastation in certain areas of the world. So how those countries who have become totally independent can be managed for the good of mankind in the future. And of course, economics, distribution of wealth, is another critical issue. Many studies show that the 20% wealthiest people of the globe, mainly in US and then Canada and Western Europe, own 85% of world resources. 20% own 85% of world resources. And 40% in the bottom, which means about 3 billion people, own virtually nothing. Over 1 billion people are virtually homeless. Over 1 billion people are virtually starving. And so this imbalance cannot continue for long. We have to think of ways of creating that equity and balance in the world in the years to come. then as the world is advancing and improve communication, improve education, then it would cause improved understanding, and then gradually, hopefully, in this generation and generation to come, the global community would be less prejudiced and less superstitious and less fundamentalist in holding on to certain dogmas and certain ways of thinking, and thinking that is the absolute truth and everybody else is going to hell except them. This way of thinking creates war and more turmoil in the world, and does not bring about peace and equity and justice. So ultimately, if all of these things come to pass, we come to the point of needing some kind of a global tribunal, not only for criminal justice, not only for dealing with nation-to-nation issues, but a sort of federalism, like the United States, or like how the European Union functions. And then that federation, which is a loose federation of all the countries of the globe, would be thinking onto how best to use world resources for the good of mankind, how best to think in terms of population balance, how best to think in terms of food resources and environment, and the question of energy and water distribution and water purity and all the rest of it. So these are, in effect, some of the most important issues dealing with our globe and globalism. Thank you for your attention.